Coming up, we'll be joined by the CEO of Lightbridge to discuss the growing demand for energy and the role nuclear power will play in meeting that need. That's next on Morning Movers. Welcome back to Morning Movers. I'm Diane King Hall, live from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Joining me now to discuss the rising global demand for energy and how nuclear power can play a role in that. We want to welcome in our next guest, that's Seth Grae, CEO of Lightbridge. Seth, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It feels like this conversation about energy needs has taken a backseat recently because of all the focus on crude oil in light of the geopolitical conflict in the Middle East, or war with Iran, I should say. The talk of nuclear making a comeback with AI driving a massive need for energy. Tell us where things stand with that now, Seth.
Well, there's obviously a focus on it with the war in Iran, as you say. We saw Qatar attacked in one site by Iran that knocked out 20% of global liquefied natural gas exports. There's nothing that could happen like that in nuclear. Nuclear power plants can store up to several years of fuel on site. So it's really a very secure and reliable form of energy. And we're seeing new action following the president's executive orders in May. We now have this new initiative from the Department of Energy called Uprise that's focusing on bringing federal resources and working with the private sector on extending the licenses of the existing reactors, finish building partly built reactors, reopen closed reactors, and build new reactors with a lot of federal financing brought to bear and benefiting from the new regulatory changes at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to get all this done.
So Seth, let me ask you this, because the one thing I've heard about nuclear is, yes, it can really meet the needs of the proliferation of AI and data centers. But the one challenge I've heard is the timeline, that it takes years. I've heard, upwards of a decade to do the build out. Is that accurate?
Well, that's where this Uprise initiative really changes things. By getting more power from the existing plants, we can very quickly get to a lot of reactors. This initiative is looking at adding about 5 large reactors worth of power by 2029, just by getting more power out of existing plants. And then soon after that, or along that similar timeline, reopen 3 closed plants that are in the process of reopening now. And what we're doing at Lightbridge in particular is focusing on a new fuel that could add tremendous new power to all of the existing plants. So you could get a lot of new power without even building new plants. And by doing this, get trained workforce, activate supply chain, do things that have to be done to then build new plants more quickly.
So, Seth, your company essentially then focus on nuclear fuel, not building the reactors. So when you think about, is this about better economics or is this about speed?
Those two go together. This is in particular about speed, but in nuclear, because the capital costs can be so high, time delays cost the greatest amount of money. So speed saves money. And as we get to building new reactors, generally by the time you build about 5 or 6 of the same kind of reactor, you've really honed them to what's called nth of a kind, where you know the cost, you know the time frame, where the 7th one and the 100th one cost about the same. So getting through early builds gets quicker with each one, but after about the 6th one, you really can build at scale much more quickly. And that's what China and others have been doing, and the United States is now moving towards.
Okay. And then I want to ask you about, we have a chart up with some, different stocks. Among the list besides yours is Oklo as well. And there's been a lot of talk about Oklo. There are, both critics and proponents because of, again, the conversation of the timeline and, the pre-revenue. But there are obviously things that are more tangible that are starting to occur in this space. What is your relationship with Oklo like?
It's very close. We're both working at Idaho National Laboratory. We're looking at combining and working together on our reprocessing and recycling technology to reuse nuclear fuel, recycle it into new fuel for reactors. We're looking at co-locating our manufacturing facilities together. So there's a lot of cooperation between Oklo and Lightbridge, even though we're very different companies, where Lightbridge is developing new fuels for the existing kinds of reactors. Oklo is developing new kinds of reactors. We're finding a lot of commonality in our technologies and our approaches. So that's a very good relationship, I think, for both companies. And the Department of Energy likes to see companies that it's supporting find ways to cooperate and help each other.
Okay, for investors who are trying to get an understanding of the opportunity here, let's think a timeline for the next 12 to 24 months. What are the key metrics or performance indicators that investors should be looking for delivery on the value proposition as it relates to nuclear?
Well, you're going to see plants actually reopen that were closed, like the 3 Mile Island Unit 1, now the Crane Clean Energy Center in Pennsylvania, empowering Microsoft data centers, the Palisades plant in Michigan, and the Duane Arnold plant in Illinois. We're going to see these power uprates for many plants, increasing more nuclear power without building reactors. We're going to see the license of reactors that would have closed getting extended. Well, this is all in the next 12 to 24 months, so that they will keep operating rather than close. For companies like Lightbridge, you'll see test results as our fuel is in testing in the Advanced Test Reactor in Idaho. And late next year, we'll have results of first fuel samples coming out of that reactor that we get to examine that will help prove these power uprates and enhance safety and benefits, better economics for existing reactors. So this is going to be a pretty action-packed 12 to 24 months for nuclear in the United States and for our company.
And Seth, I want to circle back to the Uprise initiative. It sounds like a big deal, right? But again, for our investor audience, tell us what's the fine point about what's the goal here? Is it about building new plants or getting more power out of the ones that exist?
The main points of Uprise are finish building some unfinished plants, get more power out of the existing plants, extend the licenses of existing plants so we get a lot more nuclear power or continue nuclear power without building new plants, and then transition with the benefits of doing all those things into building new plants. And I think the acronym Uprise, in particular of those benefits, focuses on getting more power out of the existing plants. And with 94 currently operating plants in the US, as we get more power out of those, we could add the equivalent of a lot of new plants fairly quickly without the capital cost or time of building new plants. And then with Lightbridge Fuel, we think get much more power, add many, many new plants, as well as for new plants that will be built, get a lot more power than they otherwise would have generated.
All right. Thank you so much for bringing the latest with regard to the Uprise initiative and beyond the landscape for nuclear power. That's Seth Grae, CEO of Lightbridge. We appreciate your time this morning, Seth. Thank you.